Our next topic in international trade is to talk about exchange rates. We're all, since we live internationally, or most of us, are quite familiar with the idea of exchange rates, but probably you still have some misconceptions. So, first of all, let's start with what an exchange rate is. An exchange rate is what you have to pay to buy a different type of currency. Here in South Africa, it's not useful for me to have euros or dollars or yuan or anything like that because I can't actually buy any goods or services here in South Africa. So, since I have to spend rand in South Africa, I have to use my other currency or some other currency, dollars for me. I have to use those dollars to buy rand so that I can pay for goods and services in South Africa. People get stuck on that. They think, well, wait a minute, you can't buy money. And I would say, actually, you can. But let's think about this. If you had 100 rand to sell, would you sell me that 100 rand for 50 rand? Well, of course you wouldn't. That would be dumb. You know that the 100 rand can buy you more stuff than 50 rand can. So you want to retain that buying power. And this is part of my overall lecture of remembering money is just something that we use to help us make exchanges. It's not the money itself that has value. Would you sell 100 rand for $10? Well, probably. I would, well, let's see. No, yeah, 100 rand would be worth a little bit less than $10. So if you bought it for $10, or if you sold it for $10, you'd be coming out ahead. But remember, that wouldn't be useful to you at all if you only had 100 rand on you and you were in South Africa and you needed to use money to buy something. Would you sell 100 rand for 3 Bahraini dinars? Well, you probably don't know what that exchange rate is, but I think that would actually be a bad idea as well. Okay? So the point is, we have to think that, yeah, you can buy money. If you're in the airport and you've got 10 rand on you or 100 rand, and you take that money and you go to a store, you walk into a store, and then you walk out with a new hat, well, you bought something, right? If I take the same 100 rand and I walk into a different store and I walk out with $10, probably $9.50, well, then again, I have to think about that exchange as me buying something. I bought those dollars with my rand. Okay, quick history. Not so long ago, maybe the last 100 years, money was all based on some sort of precious metal, gold or silver or something else. Of course, pounds, we still call pounds, they're pounds sterling, and that refers to gold or silver, I think. Anyway, they were based on some amount of a precious metal. After the Bretton Woods Agreement that we talked about for the creation of the IMF and the WTO, the world moved towards a dollar-based economy. So instead of 1 pound always being worth a certain amount of gold, 1 pound was always worth half of a dollar or something like that. And every currency around the world was based in some sort of ratio to the dollar. That didn't stay for very long because, to be quite honest, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But that is why so many people in the world are still familiar with dollars, because for basically since the end of World War II until 70s and 80s, a lot of countries still were based on the dollar. Now we call our currencies freely floating. Their values change in relationship of one to the other based on demand and supply for the respective currencies. We can classify currencies in 2 different ways today. All these examples where they were pegged to a certain amount of gold or silver, or where they were pegged to the dollar, that's what's referred to as a fixed exchange rate. So it's not going to change over time. As I just said, we also call it a pegged exchange rate. And the idea is it's been pegged, nailed to a certain value of some other, a certain quantity of some other thing, dollars, gold, silver, etc. When we're talking about that sort of system, the terms we use are to revalue it if it goes up in the exchange rate, if the exchange rate improves, or to devalue it if it goes down. It's important you know these 2 words because often when you hear about the Chinese currency, you'll hear people use revalue and devalue. And in saying that, they're suggesting that the Chinese currency is fixed even though China would say, no, it's not fixed at all, it's flexible. That's a topic we'll get into more later on, but it's important to realize that those two words suggest a fixed exchange rate. A floating exchange rate is just that. It can float at whatever level it happens to float at. When we talk about it going up or down in value in respect to other currencies, we talk about it appreciating or depreciating. In both of these cases, if I were to revalue a currency, by the way, you notice the change in tense there. I revalue it, so I'm doing the action, as in the government is doing the action. Whereas if the currency appreciates, well, it's just sort of happening. It's kind of part of the language. Both of these suggest that your currency is getting stronger in respect to other currencies, and then these both suggest that your currency is getting weaker in respect to other currencies. So for example, the rand has depreciated a lot since I moved to South Africa. It was $1 to about 8 rand when I moved here, and now it's $1 to about 11 rand. So the rand has depreciated in concerns to the dollar, whereas you would say the dollar has appreciated in relationship to the rand. You wouldn't hear that second one get said so much because in that relationship, people talk about dollars more, so they would talk about more how the rand had moved in concern to the dollar as opposed to the other way. A point of clarification before we get into how all this works is that there exists a structure called Forex. Forex is foreign exchange. You can think of it as a physical location, even think of it as a bank. It happens in banks a lot. But it's helpful if you think about it as an actual place, and this is the market for currency. When you go to buy and to sell currency, that happens inside of Forex. It happens in a lot of places. It is not one physical location, it's lots of small places, but it helps if you think about it as just one big thing. Currently, the exchange rate from US dollars to rand is about $1 to 11 rand. So the next question we could ask then is, okay, well, with $1 I could buy 11 rand. Well, how many dollars can we buy with 1 rand? To do this, we just have to go through a little math, and you'll see it's quite simple. We set it up as a ratio of dollars to rand. So $1 to 11 rand. That ratio then has to equal X amount of dollars to 1 rand. So what can 1 rand buy in terms of dollars? If I take the math through, well, I would cross multiply and divide. So we're going to cross multiply 1 times 1 equals 11 times X, and then divide 11 by 1. You see we end up with the same ratio we started with. So you don't actually need to go through all that, but that is sort of the proof of why you would get to 1 divided by 11, which is equal to 0.09, and then the result is 1 rand is equal to 0.09 US dollars. And those two ratios are roughly the same. As I said, this all depends on supply and demand. And this is where it's really important you remember that we're talking about supply and demand for money. Supply and demand, people who want to buy money, people who want to sell money. People who want to buy and sell rand, people who want to buy and sell, people who want to buy and sell rand, and people who want to buy and sell dollars. The reason I stress that, and the reason I have some titles here, is it's really easy to get confused which value you're talking about. Whenever we do demand and supply, we have a value, so that's not weird to talk about. We have a value here, so it's not weird to talk about something in prices in terms of rand, or something in prices in terms of dollars. What's weird is we're not buying shoes or bicycles, we're buying a different currency. So you'll notice on the graph, it's really important that you stress that we're buying dollars, but we're paying for the dollars in rand. Again, you wouldn't buy dollars with dollars, that wouldn't make sense. Here, we're buying rand, but we're paying for them with dollars. One note on this is the rand market expressed in terms of dollars, but it could also be expressed in terms of euro. And to be honest, in a very short amount of time period, if you could do it quickly enough, and if there were no fees, and that's the big catch, you could buy a certain amount of rand, so take $1 and buy 11 rand, take the 11 rand and buy, probably 0.8 euro, and then take that €0.8 and buy slightly more than the $1 that you started with. The demand and supply factors between different regions or countries, they can be changing all the time. So because of that, these numbers aren't always going to work out to perfectly exchange with each other. But because of that discrepancy, there will be increased demand or supply for a certain type of currency, and that discrepancy would go away. Okay, so let's look quickly here. So what we're saying is these are demanders for people who want dollars. So these aren't people inside of the United States. People in the US, for them to get dollars, they go to work. So we're talking about people outside of the United States who want to buy dollars to do business inside of the United States. So these are demanders of dollars, and then these are people who are selling dollars. Not the US government, could be sometimes, not the Federal Reserve, could be, but we're just talking anybody who is willing to sell dollars to make a profit or to get their hands on rand. So we have supply and demand of dollars, and the price of that then, so we're saying the price of the price of $1, see how easy it is to confuse. The price of $1 is 11 rand, and that reflects what we saw up here. If we looked over here, now look at the rand market, and if we look in terms of dollars, the same thing should be true. The price of 1 rand is 9 cents, 0.09 US dollars. Where this gets kind of tricky is if we see a change in demand for one currency or the other. So let's pretend there's a change in demand for rand, and this comes from more people from the United States coming to South Africa for tourism. So they need to take their dollars, and they're going to use their dollars to buy rand to spend inside of South Africa. This is going to be represented as an increase in demand for rand. We're going to see a new quantity at a higher price. And let's say this higher price is going to be 0.10. Okay, so the price of 1 rand in dollars goes from 0.09 from 9 cents to 10 cents. Okay? If we do the math over here, well, what we know then is if 1 rand is now worth 10 cents, well then in terms of dollars, $1 is worth 10 rand. The ratio would be the same, 1 to 0.10 or 10 to 1. So how do we get, so what we've seen is with $1, I can buy 10 rand. So how do I get that over here? Okay, or I should say it takes me, instead of 11 rand to buy $1, it only takes me 10. So we know this price has got to come down to 10. The question is, how is that going to occur? Well, it can occur in two ways. Either demand can shift to the left and we can slide down the supply curve, or supply can shift to the right and we can slide down the demand curve. To get it right, we have to remember that we're not talking about the overall amount of dollars. What we're talking about is the amount of dollars inside of Forex. So if Americans are going to Forex to buy rand, and they're buying the rand with dollars, that means they're leaving their dollars behind in Forex, which means the supply of dollars is going to be greater inside of Forex. So these two things would happen at the same time, and that is how the market stays balanced. So an increase in demand here leads to an increase in supply here when we talk about the market for dollars.